Bonjour, bonsoir, dear friends. Welcome to JCB Live. This is a happy hour. Another incredible wine with a very iconic, charming, and known as being irresistible and very seductive. He's 5th-generation winemaker in the heart of California. He comes from one of the most incredible family to make some of the best wines, including, of course, Cabernet, but not only, as you could see today. He, fortunately, is a big innovator, and he's really taking Napa Valley and the wine country at large very much forward. He's a great family man. I thought he had 4 kids, but there was 2 others hiding. He has 6 total, and he is really one of the men that I respect the most. Young age, dynamic, and really showing the way to many of us. So, dear friends, you guess who I'm talking about? This is the famous Joe Wagner. Joe, welcome!
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I gotta do, woo!
It's a party now.
Now the party started. Welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So, Joe, we were just talking about a great topic that is where you come from. So you're going to share with us, with such a great name. Cheers. Wagner. Is it German? Is it Eastern European? Or is it French? Trivia question.
I'll let you guys ponder that for a moment. So I grew up with the last name Wagner, always hearing that I was from German ancestry. And then you go back to Alsace, where my family came from, and they all disregard German ancestry, and they note that they're French. So it was a bit of a surprise to me, but nonetheless, great wine growing region, regardless of if it was Germany or France. And there's a lot of heritage there, a lot of history. My family immigrated in the 1850s.
1850?
Well before there was much here in California. And they ended up putting down their stakes and eventually starting in the wine business. They got shut down by Prohibition, as many other people did. Unfortunately, it is the black stain of our drinking culture in America, and we're here to bring it back. So they restarted in 72 with Caymus Vineyards.
Forgive me to interrupt, but during Prohibition, what did they do? They not even wine for the church?
They did. No, they didn't. I don't think they were politically connected enough to get the sacramental wine permit. So they resorted to prunes and walnuts. But the interesting thing about Prohibition was you could produce 250 gallons per person per year for personal consumption. And I'm still trying to find people out there that enjoy that much wine a year, because we'd like to find you and replicate you and bring you into the fold of the fine wine lovers of the world.
So 250 gallons would be almost a gallon a day. That's good. But I'm sure you could find them.
I'm sure they're out there. Yeah, there's a lot of ladies in mid-40s, beautiful, blonde. They call them cougars.
Oh,
yeah.
And
I'm a big fan.
They would enjoy Quill Chardonnay, I'm sure.
That's the goal. That's the target right there.
Perfect. Well, we should do a market survey together at some stage. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
So, plum, and then in 1971, 72, your parents or your grandparents started Caymus?
It was actually, it's a funny part to the story, because my grandparents, Charlie and Lorna, they were just farmers, but they did produce their own home wine. And they asked my father, who was 19 at the time, they said, if you join us, we will start a commercial wine business. But if you don't want to, we're going to sell the farm and move to Australia.
Wow.
And they were going to start farming up down there. And so my dad at 19, he just thought, I think he was sorting bottles at the Coca-Cola plant down in Napa, like empty bottles when they used to do the reclaiming of the bottles. And so he thought, what the hell, why not give it a shot? And, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, at 19 years old, if my parents offered me a job for free booze, I'd probably say yes, I'm all in. So they jumped in, didn't have the, biggest aspirations in the world, but became known as one of the leading contenders in Napa Valley Cabernet.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So your dad started to join the family at 19.
Yes.
How old were you when you started?
Formally 19 also. But he got me involved in the business as early as 12.
Really?
So starting in vineyards, just working alongside the crew. There's nothing more humbling than working in the fields, trying to keep up pace with the guys that are out there doing it every day. And you learn a ton. You also learn a bit of Spanish. And the culture here, it's a great requirement. Beautiful language and amazing culture. So It was a great start to it, and then got into winemaking mid-teens, and eventually decided to make it my career at about 19.
So no more schooling. You said my best school is going to be in the vineyard.
That was it. I was on my way to Davis and decided quickly that was just going to, slow me up.
And now you're going back to Davis to teach, probably.
That's I think what my dad taught me was more important than anything you could learn in a school, and that was to think outside the box.
Yeah.
So you take the basic understandings of winemaking and grape growing, but then try to rethink it.
That's it.
And you just push the envelope forward and you try to progress not just yourself, but the industry eventually. And I think that was the most important thing. And that's where we ended up with, a style of Pinot Noir like we do with Belglas that I think offends a lot of the traditionalists. But we're very proud of it. It took a lot of effort to figure out how to get that extraction from Pinot. And I love the style.
Well, we cannot wait to try it. And I know, dear friends, you can get those wines, obviously directly with Joe himself or at the Oakville Grocery. All those wines are available.
At the Oakville Grocery, great spot. You guys have done a phenomenal job with that place.
Thank you. It's like you. It's all about history. When you love history, I think you feel very passionate to try to resurrect it or keep it alive.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So 1850, how does it feel to be fifth generation winemaker and Californians?
There's a bit on your shoulders, but I just hope that I'm able to carry it through and I'm able to pass those same ideas down and thoughts about how to progress the business to my kids.
What did you learn you feel the most from your grandparents, let's say?
I think
you got to know them well.
Yeah, because they were such humble people, and it all started with the earth. They were farmers at heart that accidentally fell into wine. That's kind of how I see it. And so just kind of always taking that to heart and understanding that's what's important. That's what really the value in life is about. So you're able to work with the ground. You're able to pull from the ground and create something like a bottle of wine. I can't think of another product that can capture a time and a place forevermore if you want to hold it forever. But I can't think of another product that can do that. And I think it's just a great reflection and a great way to honor the ground.
And they were, you said, plum and other...
Yes, so they grew Mirabelle plums that they would dry and turn into prunes.
Yes.
And then walnuts.
And the Mirabelle is the famous spirit that we love to make.
That is, yes.
The Mirabelle distilled, it's the best.
It is great. It's amazing. If you haven't tried it, you have to try it.
Do you do that in honor of them once in a while?
We actually started a distillery. We have not released anything yet, but we are going to be doing some eau de vie as well. Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about, which is with a Mirabelle tart, a plum tart, and that it's a dream.
Some people would call it firewater, but when it's done right, it is just beautiful, extremely expressive of the delicate nature of that Mirabelle plum. It's a beautiful eau de vie.
Do you think Napa should eventually come back to this polyculture that Napa was so well known for, meaning cattles, plum, Mirabelle, walnuts, and not just grapes? It's if ever possible.
I think having a small orchard is a great idea. I think the value in this property now is just so high.
Yes.
You're never going to be able to create a return that's going to justify the investment there. So for us, I mean, you do have to. I would actually say that grapes at this point are a great way to express the land, right? But grapes at this point, I think, are now starting to catch up to per acre the same value as if that land was to be developed into housing.
That's it.
In Napa. And I think that's a great thing. Solidifying not just the ag preserve we have here that's going to keep this as a beautiful agricultural community, but also giving us value as landowners to want to keep it that way.
And how have you seen yourself the evolution of Napa from where, you went to school right here in San Helena?
Yeah. I mean, Camus was a shed. It was, this was a very rural community, just driving down Highway 29 right outside the house here. There was, it was a farming community, a lot of dilapidated barns and whatnot. And there still were a lot of walnuts and prunes. Now you drive through and it has been beautified over the last 4 decades. Great place to visit. If you have not visited Napa Valley, I highly recommend it. I think this is the culinary hub of America, number one. If you want some great food and great wine pairings, this is the place to be. And it is as gorgeous as ever. Even after the fires, you wouldn't even notice that the hills had been burned. It is a place to come and a place to experience. I think one of the best Epicurean areas of the nation.
And how has Napa achieved it in such a short period of time? Because we're talking about your Alsatian background, which is as well a beautiful place. Even Burgundy and Bordeaux, it took them so much longer period of time to get to where they are versus Napa. How do you account for that immediate success?
That's a good question. I would imagine that part of it had to do with Americans wanting to also drink American wines and believe that American wines could be great. And it happened over a period of decades, but the wines coming out of this area really, Napa was the first to break that mold and say, we can be on a world level. We can make wines that contend with the best of the best. And I mean, when I was a kid, my dad would still taste against the top ranked Bordeaux's. And now when we do tastings, we're only tasting against Napa Cab.
That's a big sign.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's a very interesting statement.
It's but back then that was the basis.
And I feel the same. We produce a lot of sparkling wine and champagne.
Yeah.
And I love your opinion on this because, dear friends, this is the Surealist. This is not Burgundy. This is not Champagne. This is Carnet Rose Pinot Noir. I mean, what do you think of that?
You could have fooled me.
It's amazing, right?
It is. It's a beautiful wine.
And to your point, I think American people drinking wine, I think that was a big thing, wanting to drink made in USA. And two, as well, perfecting it to this level. We thought bubbles could not be made over the last 25 years here. And look at what we do now.
Absolutely, it's that is a beautiful wine, and sparkling wine and champagne that's my desert island wine. That's what I would, if I had to choose one wine forevermore, it'd be sparkling or champagne.
So, children, how many do you have?
6 that I know of.
Ha! Woo! 6! Ooh la la!
I feel at this point they would have come out of the woodwork. So 6. I'm saying 6.
Well, and Joe and I have children of the same age, and they go to the same school, so we have a lot to talk about always.
Yeah. There's always something interesting going on in this community.
So the age ranges from what to?
So there's 14 down to 6, but there's 14-year-old twins, boy-girl twins.
Yeah.
A boy at 13, a boy at 11, a boy at 9, and a girl at almost 7.
So how is it to be such a young father? Because you're a young father of 6 kids. I mean, that's impressive.
Looking back in my 20s, it's funny. Here in Napa, right, it's a small community, and everybody moves away. They go to college, and I stayed here and started working and ended up starting a family. And my friends would come back to visit their families over the holidays. And I'd hear their stories of their parties in college and all these fun things that they're doing. And I felt like I was missing out a little bit. And so looking back on it, though, I was able to create a successful business that I love being a part of. And this industry of wine is great. Create a great family. And now I'm enjoying my 30s because of it.
That's right.
So I think that was kind of the trade-off.
And you are now how old?
38.
38. Can you imagine 6 kids already under his belt? The big work is done.
Yes, it is.
We told you Napa Valley was fertile. This is impressive. Did you get it from the Chardonnay you make?
Oh,
fertility.
I'm gonna go with the sparkling. It was the sparkling.
Oh, it was the bubble.
Yeah. Yep.
Quite amazing. Well, congratulations, and we have twins too. So
yeah.
Well, you got a boy and a girl. That's pretty impressive.
It's all the luck of the draw, right? You never know.
And you have many siblings as well, right?
3 siblings, so I'm one of 4. My brother, then me, and then I had 2 younger sisters. Which is a pretty big family here in the U.S. It's 4 kids.
And you all make wine.
Yes, actually, my youngest sister has not dabbled in it yet. She's playing around a little. But my brother makes Chardonnay. My sister makes Sauvignon Blanc and Merlot. I started with Pinot Noir, which was the oddball thing at the time, and then just had curiosity about everything. And at some point, making Chardonnay, I knew that I was going to be going up against my brother. And I used to tell him all the time, I was like, oh, Chardonnay, that's not even a real wine. You don't ferment on your skins. This is amateur winemaking. And I started Copper Cane in 2014. And I wanted to have a rounded out portfolio so we could, any food pairing that was to be thrown at it, we could have a wine for. And so I had to start making Chardonnay. And now I will tell my brother, it takes talent to make great Chardonnay.
Well, shall we try? And maybe you want to show that beautiful closure you
absolutely.
You kind of created this, right?
Well, we started working with this company. They were a smaller, Guala, which is a large company, but they had just started producing this capsule they call the WAC.
Yeah.
And it's different from a regular screw cap where it actually has a pre-lined insert in it. Yeah. So it's applied through being spun down on the bottle, so you get a perfect seal every time.
Yes.
So fell in love with this.
So I'm just going to go closer so everybody can see what you're talking about. You see, the lining is right there.
It is a great seal. And what we've seen, actually, I'll tell you a quick story about our Quilt Cabernet, and when we were deciding if we were going to go screw cap or cork.
Yeah.
And so I had, 20 people in a room, and we were sitting around, and I pulled out 3 bottles of 2004 Plump Jack.
Yeah.
In screw cap, and 3 bottles, same vintage, same wine, under cork, and did a blind tasting. And everybody raised their hands for the screw cap. And what it did differently was it maintained the integrity of the fruit for a longer period of time in that wine. And you still had that bottle bouquet, that kind of forest floor develop, but not as abruptly as what the cork finish had. So what we learned through that, and what we're now putting into play, is that anything we produce is either under screw cap, which I think is a phenomenal closure, or under cork with a wax seal. So the wax has that same minimal oxygen environment to it. So just hoping that if people do want to cellar these wines for 10, 15, 20 years, that they're going to hold up just as we intended them from the cellar.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. So let's try.
Cheers.
To see who is winning between you and your brother. Or maybe both. And it's so exciting, dear friends. Maybe a side note story. Maybe you don't know, in 2001, we dared in Burgundy with my parents' winery, which happens to be the same name and the same initials as mine. So we were taking, all of us, the same risk of going screw cap. And it was amazing, Joe, because what happened is we put Charme Chambertin Grand Cru, Clos de la Roche, Clos Vougeot, Corton Charlemagne, and everybody got so crazy that even our name on the wall of the Clos Vougeot were written, Boisset Betrayer, because we supposedly betrayed that cork that now obviously everybody has moved, not completely away from, but
the acceptability and understanding of the technology is there, that it is a good closure, and it takes a set of balls to do that, right?
Yeah,
you're going against traditionalists that don't see it any other way than how it's always been, and so when you just kind of put it all out there and you go for it wholeheartedly and you truly believe in it, it's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of change on their part, but in the end, it will show. I remember when we first did our first screw-capped Pinot. We got some pushback as well, but I felt like that was the best, the best way to go, and that was Meiomi when we first did that, and we got a lot of traditionalists going, "No, you can't put a."
You're going to tell us about Meiomi. I mean, so maybe tell us about Meiomi now.
I'll start with that. So, just a little history. So I started Belglas in 2001, first vintage, named it after my grandmother. Lorna Belglas. We can get into that in a minute.
This beautiful wine,
but
cannot wait to taste.
2001 was very hard for us to reach out to Americans and teach them about California Pinot. If they wanted Pinot, they were going to Burgundy, they knew what they wanted, and they didn't really have an interest in California Pinot. So came out with this idea that we would be taking Pinot Noir from different vineyards. Rather than our vineyard designates like we have with Belglas, we would blend it together from 3 different regions. And that created Meiomi. And it was a restaurant-driven wine, so it was just by the glass.
And where did you find the name Meiomi?
It actually means coastal in the native Wapo language, which is the
that's right,
the tribe that was here. So that's where we got it from, and so there are a few people that are still preserving the language. They worked great with us, and I think we're very happy to be able to bring a language that's very hard to find out there back into the limelight.
But as you said, the map of Napa Valley was called Wapo North, South, East, and West.
Yeah, all of it.
Pre-1826, right?
Yeah.
So very important.
Yep. So again, history and preserving history, right? So
very important.
Meiomi was our opportunity to get Pinot Noir into people's mouths and have them believe in it. And it did start doing that, but the fundamental change was Sideways.
Yes.
And Sideways brought people from throughout America into a curiosity of Pinot Noir. And that helped us become, more prominent in the Pinot Noir circles. So that brand grew phenomenally well. And I had just started Copper Cane, which was giving me kind of my opportunity to expand outside of the walls that I was confined within in the past. And I wanted to do Cabernet and Zinfandel and oddball varietals and just have fun. That's what it's all about.
Winemaking is about.
So started Copper Cane, and we had an offer to sell the brand.
So how does an offer work? You got a phone call?
I got phone calls for like 2 years, and and I kept telling them, no, I'm not interested. Yeah. And finally one day they just asked me, they said, hey, just let us give you kind of a multiple, and you figure out what your earnings were, and here's the multiple, and you figure out if you want to talk. And they gave me that multiple, and I thought they were batshit crazy. It's like, you guys you guys are willing to pay that much for just the trademark of this brand? And they said, yes, we believe there's opportunity here. And I looked at it and I thought, I'm in the fine wine world. I want to be focused on small lots and really focusing on the vineyards and grape growing and everything. And this was starting to pull me out. We're already at 500,000 cases.
Wow.
And of just
big volume, 6 million bottles.
Of just one bottling. And so I thought this will give us the opportunity to invest in more farmland, facilities, make all my dreams come true. And so we took the offer. And it's been a great time.
How did you feel when you said yes?
I actually felt very, in a way, relieved, but also knowing that there was a lot more work to be done, but it was the work that I loved doing. Instead of managing a business, I was able to get back into the stuff that I loved, creation of new wines and planting new varietals in different locations that we had never done. So that's what really drove me.
And you owned that wine on your own, right?
Yeah.
You had created it from scratch.
Yeah, just, pretty much.
How
it was out of necessity. I'll tell you, I was in so much debt that I had our finance guy say, I don't think you're going to get out of this one. And I said, I'm going to make sure we get out of this one.
And it's so easy because to make wine, we need that.
Yeah. And
there's no way around it.
Then it started to grow, and we were able to, get out of debt, and then ended up selling.
How did you announce it to your family, to your parents?
My dad was probably the hardest conversation.
Yes.
But he was mostly worried about the reputation, right? Uh-huh. So you can garner a reputation as being a brand builder and seller.
Yeah.
Or you can have a reputation as being, a brand creator and a steward of it, right?
That's right, and keeping them for the next generation.
Exactly. And so I felt that this was actually giving me more of an opportunity to take the brands that were truly close to my heart and then create new ones and be able to pass that down to the kids.
Yeah.
So
that's brilliant.
But that was his only concern of it. But he was supportive,
And then he celebrated with you?
Yeah, we celebrated. Cigars and champagne.
And what did your sibling think of it?
I think they were all good with it. My brother was pretty silent, but I think he was happy about it.
So, dear friends, if you don't know, Mr. Joe Wagner sold, and I won't say the price, but one of the highest value of all wineries ever sold in the history of Napa Valley. So I want to raise my glass to that amazing success.
Well, thank you.
And to what we're tasting, because how did the name Quilt come about?
So I typically, as you can see, most of the names of our brands, from Elowan to Bowen to Stiora, Belgloss, they're not easy to pronounce. But they're brands, or they're brand names that really ask the question, or beg the question to be asked of, what does this mean? What does it stand for? And every brand really has to have, something like a stake in the ground about what it's doing, what it's going for. With Quilt, it was the first time we actually used English on the label. And
that's what I was going to say. Native American was the official language at home.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, Rancho Camus is actually post the Indians, right?
And so with Quilt, we it was, the story was laid in, and I really liked the idea of the patchwork of Napa Valley. If you look at an aerial image of Napa, even on Google Earth, you'll see that it's this beautiful patchwork, especially this time of year, as fall is just now starting to turn colors. And you're seeing some green blocks, some red blocks, some orange blocks, some brown blocks. And it's this beautiful kind of overlay. And with these wines, we work with vineyards from throughout the Napa Valley, so not just one single vineyard. I believe that Napa Valley Cabernet does better when you use different Cabernets from different regions. So you can kind of blend it in, create a more consistent style every year.
For sure.
And so that's where the philosophy of Quilt being, the accumulation of the patchwork of Napa Valley to create a cult style Cabernet. Mm-hmm. That's the philosophy. That's
fantastic. And now, how would you describe the Chardonnay?
So,
because we're making you jealous, but you're going to go to the stores, you're going to call us and get it. This is the hell of a great Chardonnay, and I can tell you, unlike what you thought before, my world is Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Well, from Burgundy.
Well, so you should be the judge.
No, you tell us. I'm the judge. I'm always half empty already.
So generally, I like my whites a little more traditional, right? I love the minerality. I love higher acidity. I think that balance in the wine just keeps the palate lively. It begs you back for another bite of whatever you're eating and wants you to take another sip. If it's too drab, too fat, too oily, you can enjoy a few sips, but it doesn't enliven your palate. So with this wine, while we did go through full ML fermentation, so it did get this nice buttery kind of creamy note. It does go into about 70% new French oak, so it's got those tones as well. it's not overdone. It's still very well balanced and has a nice crisp acidity to keep it that way. So that's my philosophy with the Chardonnay.
And I think Premier Cru Chablis even more than the Côte de Beaune.
Yeah.
Which is a great compliment to this great level of acidity you have in this wine. Well done. So now, as we go to the next wine, there's a big story. And this is obviously Bellegasse. So you're 19. And this is for all of you thinking you may want to do something else in your life or branch out of the family business or go for it because you went for it.
Yeah.
So you were 19 and you started this winery?
Yeah, it didn't quite look or feel like this at the time. But I believed in what we were doing, and that was it. So the name Bellegasse kept coming up. My grandmother loved Pinot Noir; was her favorite varietal, and my grandfather always made a little bit of Pinot Noir on the side, even though Caymus was always known for Cabernet.
For sure.
So with this, I asked her if she'd be okay with us using her name. Her maiden name was Lorna Bellegasse. Glass is also an Alsatian name.
Yeah.
And so she said yes after a bit of squabbling. But once she realized that it was, our intention to carry her name through generations, ahead of us, and to honor the past of what she brought. And there's Gloss Lane, actually, not too far from Oakville Grocery as you're heading down. Small road right after Cake Bread.
I see.
And so so that's where she grew up, was right at the end of that.
Fantastic.
And my grandfather grew up in Rutherford, and the families didn't really like each other, but my grandparents eloped to Reno, of all places, and got married. And they had 3 kids and lived happily ever after making wine. But
love makes you do fabulous things.
So I was 19 when I started, but my grandfather, when he started in the wine business, he was 60 years old.
Really?
So, he was...
Yeah, because he was more of a grower before, right?
Yeah, and you think of the risk involved.
Do you mind finishing your glass? Because when the wines are good, you need to show the example to all our guests that we, as winemakers, drink what we make.
And I think big sips taste better than small sips.
That's it.
So with Bellegasse, naming it after my grandmother, and I will also say she lived to the age of 98 years old. I was very close with her. My office was actually her garage up until I started Copper Cane in 2014. So I saw her almost every day. Just paying homage to her and carrying her name forward. But 98, enjoyed wine just about every day of her life, a little bit at lunch and a little bit more at dinner, and was healthy, had her wits about her till the day that she passed. Just an amazing woman. And
did she drink a lot of this wine?
She ended up drinking a lot of this wine. In her later years, she wanted a little sweetness. She liked a little bit of an off-dry Riesling, that sort of thing. So yeah,
that's that generation.
I think yeah.
So you said, talk about the trends you've set with this wine, because I think, dear friends, it's fine to talk about Pinot. And as you said, it's an evolution from the traditional Burgundian Pinot.
So I'd say overall, much like Napa Valley went through its period of trying to emulate Bordeaux at one time, California and Oregon Pinot Noir, for that matter, has gone through a period of trying to emulate Burgundy.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with that is you can't make Burgundy unless you're in Burgundy.
Yeah.
And so when I started playing with it, I took all the traditional methods and just didn't feel like we were doing justice for what Mother Nature was giving us. And so started doing experiments every year. Every single fermentation lot, every half ton was an experimentation. I screwed up a hell of a lot of wine, but I learned from every mistake and every success. And that gave us this benchmark style of a very rich, opulent, velvety style of Pinot. It still has good acidity.
Yeah.
So I talk about balance in wine as being the structure of the wine against the natural acidity. And that's our job in the winemaking process, to make sure that we're extracting to a point where it's not getting tight, where you're not getting that tannin binding up with the acidity.
Right, which is the case.
And with Pinot Noir, we naturally have high acidity and naturally low structure, so we're already set up. But you can easily over-extract or under-extract. So it's a matter of getting everything Mother Nature intended there to be without overdoing it or underdoing it. So it's just that riding that line. And so that's what we did with Bellegasse, and created a unique style of Pinot Noir, and one that fortunately people enjoy. I mean, at the end of the day, I go with my own palate. And I know you weren't born in America, but I think that as we've all grown up, we were drinking Coca-Cola. Yeah. We were eating Raisin Bran. Whatever it was, we have a palate, and that similar palate of what we grew up with, I think resonates in what Americans enjoy drinking as wine. And so I just trust my palate and assume that other people out there are similar to me, and they'll hopefully enjoy it.
And they are.
Thank God. Thank you all out there for for enjoying these wines.
And this is a gorgeous presentation. So you alluded to it earlier, the wax on top of the cork. So you want to maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the first time we did this was, we were talking about Meiomi earlier. Meiomi was kind of our second label, right? Our lower tier Pinot Noir. And so to differentiate it in our second production of Belle Gloss, I wanted to go with something that would upstage the Belle Gloss, so people could see from the outside what we intended to do on the inside, what level of quality and character that wine should be in comparison to Meiomi. And that's where I started playing with wax, and I dipped it in a little bit, dipped it a little deeper, and then a little deeper, and so on and so forth until we got this crazy looking red wax. Yeah. And little did I know, probably have marketing teams looking at this and saying like, oh, if we do this type of wax dip, maybe it'll work. And we never had that. It was just kind of by happenstance and by accident, and it turned into really the mark of our brand.
So you represent the wine department and the marketing department.
Now I have help on both sides. Trust me. Well, but no, back then it was very.
I got to tell you, this is brilliant. And when you dip it, and you don't pay too much attention of turning fast enough, this goes on the front side.
It's it actually, there's an art to dipping these bottles, as every bottle is. They can look horrible if you don't do them right.
And it's very interesting. In Burgundy, we were smiling when, Robert Mondavi was really pushing this wax top finish and the dot of different colors, because every 15 years we change the corks and we introduce a new wax color. So when you tour a Burgundy cellar, it's quite interesting because you have yellow for one decade, then red for another, then blue for another, then black, etc. So we use 5 colors to represent 50 years.
Okay.
So
I actually did not know that.
Well, when you come and see our cellars, you're going to be surprised. You say, well, those wax, because we turn the corks.
All right.
Because on older wine, you want to service them.
Yeah.
You're going to do that. But that has been a great success wine.
It has, fortunately, and if people are, I think the way I look at it is, we're all aspirational.
Yes.
We all want to move to the next level, and once you move from that $5 bottle of wine to a 10, and then a 10 to a 20, 20 to a 50, you never want to go back down that ladder. You've tasted how good that wine is, how much value that brings.
That's right.
And I think that the world of fine wine, I can't think of a bigger world of products than wine, right? You go out on the marketplace here in America alone, there's like 14,000 different options.
Yeah.
There's no other category I can think of. So not only do you, as an enjoyer of fine wine, have endless opportunities, you can experiment with something. You find California Pinot Noir that you love, and you start exploring all the inroads of California Pinot. Then you go to Burgundy and do the same thing. And maybe you get, a wild hair up your ass about Rioja, and you go do that. And that's the beauty of the wine business or the wine world. And it not only has the excitement of opening that bottle and kind of taking you to that place and learning more about that place. It is a great icon of progressing the culture, I think.
And where do you think the culture is indeed progressing in America as far as wine? Where do you see it going?
As far as people's enjoyment of what types of wine?
Yeah.
Well, I think that the red blend category continues to drive, but that is just, to me, that is a solid, like, I want a good red that's going to drink well.
Yeah.
When people want to experience something, they're going varietal, they're going appellation, and they're learning more and more about it.
And you think that's growing, progressing?
Oh, yeah.
And you're on the right track there.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes. And here it's Napa Valley even.
This is, so this started off...
People have a preconceived ideas of Napa not being able to make great Pinot.
Yes, I agree. So this started off as wanting to showcase that we could not only make a great Napa Valley Pinot Noir, but as Napa Valley has become more provincial in its wine lists, so you go to a restaurant, and a lot of the wine lists have turned to Napa only. Oddly, we make all of our wines here in Napa, even though most of Belle Gloss is from grapes we grow outside of Napa.
Yeah.
And so we weren't on a lot of the wine lists. And so I said, okay, we got to make a wine for these wine lists. Then second to that, I thought, we've got this great auction we do every year, Premier Napa Valley.
Yeah.
And it's for a great cause, and I wanted to bring a barrel of Pinot Noir, because almost everybody there brings Cabernet. And so I thought, why not just be like the odd man out? I've been a little bit of a maverick all my life. So that we'll bring a barrel of Pinot Noir and auction it off. And so it wasn't just like, everybody's bringing their Colt cabs up there, these massive, gigantic Cabernets. I thought, we got to make a massive, gigantic Pinot Noir. So if we didn't offend people with the style of Pinot Noirs we were already making with Belle Gloss, then this one is sure to do it. This thing, like over 16% alcohol every year.
Wow.
It's a monster. It's grown in Carneros, but you can get it ripe. Where the Carneros I was used to was like rose petal, delicate. But if you just let it push that ripeness spectrum, it ends up being a monster of a Pinot Noir. So that's what we have here. It's been a ton of fun to play with this wine. We call it the Uhlenloch Vineyard.
Yeah.
Which,
well, it's outstanding. So what is your passion besides wine? To go a little more personal now, because we're going to go back to wine, but we're going to know who Mr. Wagner Jr. is.
Oh, geez. I do love cars. Not fast cars, not fancy new cars. I like classics.
American cars.
Oh no, I love them all.
Oh.
In particular, I love old Mercedes. I don't know why. Just
Very
always
cool.
said, I think they're beautiful engineering, beautiful design. You get back into like those ponton styles of.
And you collect cars as well?
Not a big collector. Maybe someday, but I have a few.
I'm sure you do. I've seen you in a few. Well, you drive an all-American cars, the Cadillac.
Yes, except the classics. All the classics got to be old. The new ones, I do try to support American all the time.
Well, and the American classic cars are the best, isn't it?
Oh yeah, those are beautiful cars. A lot of those.
So
are amazing.
cars, what else?
Geez, always
sports, of course.
I do a little bit of sports. Usually I'm more likely to know the stats of my kids' sports teams than professional sports teams. Or do we even have professional sports right now?
I'm not sure. I'm on the peripheral of that. I'm like you with my daughters.
Yeah, exactly. It's just following those kids around. It's like, all right, what was your batting average last year?
Yeah.
So that music, I've always loved music, and I kind of run the gamut of music. So I listen to everything from country to rap to rock to classical. It drives my kids crazy, but I just put on shuffle. And it's like whatever comes on, and it's like you're not driving, you don't get to touch it. You got to listen. I'm going to culture you.
Yeah. And they're into it as well.
They're pretty into it. They get like stuck in their certain genres right now. You hit the teenage years, and they're just like you don't know what's 1 month is totally different than the next.
And do you play music yourself?
I do. I play brass. So I play trumpet, trombone, baritone, French horn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's
we're gonna get you to play at the schools reunion. We could get a bit of fundraising going.
Exactly. We need another one of those.
So what as you're creating, you believe in history a lot, and you're very much into Native Americans as well, and what Napa was before. What really inspires you besides obviously wine and
I think long term. It is so. I'm inspired by what we've created in the past and what we can bring into the future, right? So always trying to better ourselves, and then I constantly look at it like, how can I properly work this to have my kids get involved and be passionate about the industry, and knowing what is passionate about the industry. I mean, the wine industry itself has all of these elements. You have agriculture, you have artistry, you have chemistry and science. You have the industrial aspects of bottling and that stuff. So there's different elements. I mean, even getting into marketing and packaging, there's so many different elements to get involved with. But having them understand every element and then finding something that they want to dive into. So that's always inspiring to me, just kind of seeing how we can get the next generation in, but also pushing forward with creating new wines. I mean, look at your packaging on these wines. You guys aren't sitting on your laurels. You guys are.
Well, we like you. We get excited to have wine as the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
And from packaging to everything else and what it means to culture, history, heritage, fashion.
Yeah.
Jewelry, of course.
Yeah,
we love to put our jewelry on the bottle as well.
It looks great,
Well, but I agree with you. It's wonderful to think about your kids. So, if you had a dream in terms of your kids, there's many other dreams we should talk about.
Yeah.
Would you want your 6 kids to be part of what you do?
I've joked that my 2 biggest fears are either none of them or all of them get involved.
Yeah.
So I would err on the side of I'd love them all getting involved. I think
that's great.
There's a place for them, but much like my dad didn't just say, "Hey, come into the wine business," and I expect you to take this over, something like that. It was like, why don't you try it out? If you like it, then we'll figure out something. And what he offered me was an opportunity. And that opportunity was working under him, learning from him, and creating a brand. And that brand eventually was Bell Gloss.
Yeah.
And as
so he helped you at the beginning a little bit.
Oh yeah, and as he would say it, he'd say, it's up to you where you go with this opportunity.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's a great way. So each of you as a kid
had
an opportunity to play with a brand or a
varietal or even an aspect of the business. And so that was kind of his gift of giving to us in the industry.
You're giving me a lot of ideas right now.
and I think what's great about that was that it questioned your passion in it, right? So you either truly loved it and wanted to be a part of it, or you found kind of the lane that you wanted to live in within it. I loved every aspect of it, and so I took it very seriously and worked my ass off and created some cool things that I'm pretty proud of.
Well, so now we need to ask Joe to go into what his DNA is about. I'm sure if you take some blood out of his right arm, there's Cabernet coming out.
There will be in just a minute, I'm sure.
Exactly. So we're going to go with Quilt Cabernet, which I need to tell you, I've had many, many glasses at the Oakville Grocery, and I've been a big fan of your wine. So maybe before I go to the next powerful personal question.
All right.
Maybe you describe this wine, because this is something everybody should try. And I'd love to get as well, in addition to description, what does your father with Camus think of it? Because you are really making the hell of a wine.
So, cheers. Thank you.
And I have a lot of Camus in my cellar personally, and at the Oakville Grocery as well. So.
And I still drink the hell out of Camus. When we started Quilt, I wanted to make sure we weren't treading on each other's price points in the market. So keeping separation there. So that was an important part. Talked to my dad about it. But I don't think you could have a wine portfolio that's rounded out without Cabernet.
Yeah.
And so
I'm with you on that.
And so it was
more than
important. Yeah, exactly. And I didn't feel like we were going to be cutting into each other's, places in the market. And I don't think we have as of yet. So with the philosophy here, part of it was that Napa Valley Cabernet, at the style that used to be accessible, right?
Yeah.
20 years ago, you could find a great bottle for $20 to $40. Now all those are, $100, $200, even $500 a bottle. And I feel like we're losing the next generation that's coming up. They're looking at it saying like, you know what? I'm not going to pay $100 for a bottle of wine that I've never tried, and just because it says Napa Valley. And so I wanted to bring people in by showing them that the cult style of Napa Valley Cab can be done at a price point that is more accessible, more of like a Tuesday night wine, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's where we started with Quilt, and we've brought it upscale, with the reserve and whatnot. But nonetheless, each one of the wines I think is a great representation of what Napa Valley Cab has always been at the highest level, without having to take I'm going to go and maybe be a little offensive here, but the elitist approach, because I think that there has been an elitist approach to part of Napa, and being able to bring it into more mainstream. I think that the wine industry has done a great job of breaking down these walls, right? And bringing everybody in. It used to be, you either drank beer, you drank whiskey, but wine was for the fancy people. Yeah. I think wine is now it's for everybody. That's and we should keep it that way.
As it should be.
Yeah, and you guys and everything that you guys message out there, it is for everybody. It is, at the end of the day, you've worked your butt off, sit down, have a great glass of wine, relax, and that should be part of the highlight of the day.
Well, where do you think, before we describe this beautiful wine, where do you think this elitism in Napa is going to go? And what's your view of Napa? You're born, raised here, you're part of Napa's skin, Napa's skeleton, Napa's fabric. you are Napa. So where do you think it's going to go?
You're getting into a lot of the philosophical questions here.
Of course. This is a philosophical, psychological show.
Was he a therapist in his past?
That's my future life. I have 3 ladies at home. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I sleep outside.
You're going to have some fun.
I sleep with the dogs these days.
I think, so you and I were both in this business multi-generationally, so I think that we're in a very different group of most of what Napa's in.
Yeah.
Napa, you have a lot
very much different group. Yeah.
I'll call them, kind of like your second career.
Yeah.
You've made a great career out of whatever it was. You were in the .com business or something of that sort, and you want a piece of Eden, and you want to start a small winery, and you start this winery. It's only going to produce a small amount. You're going to charge a huge amount of money for it. You're going to get some great reviews and whatnot, and that becomes kind of the business model.
Yeah.
And then other people see that and think, well, I'm going to invest too. And so you've now elevated the average price point of Napa Cab. Well, a lot of those people now are starting to have their true retirement. So they had their first retirement, moved into Napa, started their kind of hobby job and had success with it. Now they're wanting to get out of it. So I think what's interesting about Napa's future is that a lot of these cult producers, I think, are actually going to be selling.
Yeah.
And I don't think they have another generation that's interested in coming in and taking over the reins. So, from the perspective of a multi-generational family perspective, I think there are very few of us that really see the long term of this and have been a part of it with their children to usher them into a business. And hopefully, I mean, honestly, I got 6 kids because I figured, you throw enough spaghetti at the wall, something's going to stick, right? So statistically, one of my kids will be involved in the wine business.
And he has quite a spaghetti, obviously. 6 of them. So did I really say that?
So I mean that's it. So you got to like think about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And then so I think that Napa's future, it has never done well with the corporate world. If you're a publicly traded company, it doesn't seem to do well because grapes and wine are so up and down. I mean, this year is a great example. 2020 just low crop yields. It's going to be high cost of production. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. I think, honestly, everything we brought in this year is phenomenal, although we're down about 35% or so.
That's right.
So, I think that those things don't bode well. So I think it really lends itself to multi-generational families. Yeah. As I think in France, you guys have seen that, and that's why there are so many multi-generational families. I think we're still, in our adolescence here in the U.S., in the wine business, and trying to figure out kind of what that looks like in the long term.
And where do you see the Napa style as far as the style of wine becoming? Because you were born drinking Cabernet. You've made, and you are making fantastic Cabernet, obviously, not only with Camus, with Quilt, and many other great projects. What's your view of the evolution of that style?
I think the bigger, the better, but it has to be balanced.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Because although I've seen kind of a desire to pull back and go a little more towards the old school, like 1970s Napa cabs, I just think people are looking for, they expect out of Napa this mouth-filling experience that placates every aspect of your mouth.
This wine.
Yeah, and that's what we go for. I think that's but I have seen some wines that are a little overdone, or the acid is too low. I think that's what it is. The acid's too low, and so it kind of gets all drab on the palate. But overall, I think it's going to continue to be finding that perfect balance with as much filling as possible. Really?
So how would you describe this one? Pretty much this way, I guess.
That's what we're going for here. Is it's got good tannin on the back end. So with Cabernet, I always expect that the tannin, kind of that fine drying element, is going to be what carries the finish through. Where with Pinot Noir, I look for acidity to carry the finish through. But this wine hits your palate right off the bat, and just mouth filling. Kind of, you start to feel that tannin, but it has a lot of like fine grained phenolics. Just coats every element of the mouth. It's got good deep berry flavors, earthiness. So I think it's got all those bells and whistles that we're looking for.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And what kind of barrel do you have here?
This is all French, and we do some crazy stuff with our oak. So you're talking about the French being traditionalists, right, with the screw caps.
Yeah.
So when we talk to our coopers, we tell them what we do. Well, they're good with experimentation in the cooperage, different toast levels, and breaking barrels apart, reassembling them. But when they find out what we do when we bring the barrels to the winery, before we fill them with wine, we will actually fill them with a sulfur water soak for about 2 to 3 months.
2 to 3 months?
And it'll soak out, leach out the tannins. And that's the goal, is that we want to maintain the integrity of the aromatics and the flavors of the French oak, but not contribute tannin.
And how much sulfur to water?
It's about 200 part per million.
Wow.
And so what we do is we'll rack that out, or pull that back out of the barrel, put it in tank, and use it for another lot of barrels in the future. But
makes sense.
Sulfur is something we use in the winery regardless. And so our first fill is actually kind of a new seasoned barrel. And so we don't get a huge impact. But this wine sees about 80% new French for the new seasoned French. I'll call it that.
Yeah, I love it. And by the way, what do you think of free SO2 wines or no sulfur?
Oh, God, I've done it before. It's just they
Tell them.
they're unfortunately.
I mean, there's a world dreaming out there.
Yeah, we all love the idea. Sulfur is a necessary evil. I don't even think that it's evil. I think that this is interesting. So you talk about the French paradox, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's healthy, but they're enjoying life. They're eating, great and everything in France, but they live forever.
Yeah.
I honestly think that sulfur is a big contributor to that. Mm-hmm. Sulfur is one of Mother Nature's most effective antioxidants, and that's why we use it in the winery, so that the wine doesn't oxidize. So whether you're purchasing, dried fruits, nuts, there's a lot of things that utilize sulfur. But sulfur, back in the day, my grandparents used to take tablespoons full of sulfur and molasses.
Absolutely.
And
mine too, by the way, on the other side of the pond.
Yeah, I truly believe that sulfur actually is a great antioxidant for the body. And so it's not something that, I know some people may have an allergic reaction. I think it's a very small percentage that get a headache from it. But overall, I think that it is not only a necessity in making good wine that is stable in the bottle, because I've not had a stable wine that does not use sulfur.
Everybody's listening.
But I actually think that it has health benefits.
Yeah. So on the same trend, just to play with trends, natural wines.
Okay, I got to tell you this story.
We're talking trends.
So I was given a seminar in the Midwest, and these two guys walk in the back of the room, and they're just standing there, kind of like, those guys aren't here for the seminar. They're like, they're wanting to get some info or whatever, and so they start heckling me. Which, if you want to really enliven a seminar, bring some hecklers in. It made for like amazing conversation. Yeah, it was comedic. It was rowdy. It was a ton of fun. So. But they asked me that question. So what do you think about natural winemaking? Yeah. And I said, well, define natural winemaking. Is that the non-interventionist approach? Yeah. And they said, yes. And I said, the moment you plant a vine, you are manipulating Mother Nature in that given spot, that soil, the climate around it. You're manipulating Mother Nature to give you everything that you can get out of her to create a resulting bottle of wine that hopefully you didn't screw up anywhere along the way, and you actually convey that message that Mother Nature wanted to give you. Yeah. So every aspect of it, from your planting the vineyard, your trellising, any other inputs you put into the vineyard, into the cellar, and how you're working your fermentation. So the way that I talk about it is, if you look at it from a recipe winemaking standpoint, to be a natural winemaker, if you're going to say, well, we are non-interventionist, but we only punch it down 3 times a day until it's dry. Well, what's the standardization for it? That's right. And there is no standardization. So you have to look at it from the standpoint of, are you truly taking what Mother Nature gave you and pulling it all out, or are you just taking what I'd call a lazy approach? Yeah, yeah. And no offense to the natural winemakers out there, I think you're lazy though.
You got the message. No, but it's great.
With all due respect.
When you really make wine, I think that's the answer I was hoping to hear, and I'm delighted, Joe, we're on the same page. So now, to come back to you, what is your dream?
My dream, we alluded to it earlier. I want my kids to be involved in the business.
We alluded to that, but keep going there. But what is your dream? Joe Wagner himself. Jeez. Besides your kids, let's go deep into your heart is on both sides, right? You have to.
I think I live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. Very fortunate. Napa Valley is an awesome place. I think I would like to, maybe at some point in my life, the kids take over the business. Yeah. I'm able to make wine somewhere, maybe not even here, maybe somewhere in the world. Yeah. And
maybe Alsace.
Maybe, yeah, just do like the garagiste thing, right? Yeah. Just in the garage, make a small amount of wine every year, open the doors once a year, sell everything out, and go back to my winemaking. Yeah.
Is winemaking your true passion?
I love grape growing and winemaking.
Because you're a great communicator, so you love sales too. You love convincing people.
But I get excited about telling the story, but if you can have the comfort to get out there and tell the story, I think that it is also a necessity in our world to be able to do that, to continue to bring the message out about fine wine. And I think that, it really does come down to a personality thing. Do I get nervous? Of course, I still get nervous at times when I'm doing seminars and whatnot. But at the end of each one of those seminars or wine dinners, I feel great.
Yeah.
I feel like I've just talked to people that have
that nervous.
You know, I don't. It doesn't come across as nervous, I guess. But no, you see that they've absorbed the passion that went into the wines too. They had a great time, and they're going to leave knowing more and wanting more.
That's right.
I think that's it.
So I'm going to have you try the Leopard, because you know he's kind of the leopard of Napa Valley too, the powerful leopard who dared. As a savage, as a feline.
I think you're trying to get me drunk here.
Well, we got to taste wine once in a while together. We taste on barrel every year.
Cheers. Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, there's a passion you haven't talked about, which I'd love for you to explain to everyone. You've opened a fantastic new destination in the heart of Napa, in the town of Napa, dear friends. So that must be one of your passions as well.
That's a great wine.
Thank you.
Very nice.
It will open. We'll let it open up more.
Yeah. So I've always had a passion for cuisine, and trying to take our philosophy, what we do at Copper Cane, and Copper Cane is really, it's go with your palate. That's what we say. You just go with what you enjoy. I don't care if it's White Zinfandel, Pabst Blue Ribbon. Go with what you enjoy. With Copper Cane, you know, we have a style of our wines, and so bringing that to a menu, we wanted to kind of convey that, it's kind of California in its theme. It's America in its theme, but we pull from everywhere. We pull philosophies from everywhere across the globe to create a menu that not only accommodates what every kind of detail would be from different cuisines, but also something that would pair well with our wines. And also accommodate, you know, any of the dietary restrictions. Actually, the chef there is phenomenal. He's doing some of, I think, the best vegan dishes.
And you're open now.
Yeah, we're open now.
So
we're partially open because we're in California.
Yeah. So the name is
A Vow.
So, dear friends, it's a bar as well because you serve spirits.
So we are a bar and restaurant. It's actually 3 stories. It's in downtown Napa. It's in a historic building that was called the Faggiani Building, which has a history into itself. But we purchased it a few years back and then gutted it, revamped it, and added a rooftop bar to it. So a very fun place if you're looking for a dining experience. We've got a dining room, and then we have a lower level bar, upper level bar. So there's kind of different elements to it if you're looking for something totally casual or something that's more upscale. And the menu is available throughout the entire restaurant. And
respecting all the dietary restrictions, as you said, from vegan to all of that.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, I mean, you have to really get outside of the box. And just as we're trying to progress the wine industry, there are people out there that want specific elements, with the exception of the wine industry. We're not going to do unsulfured wine. But
we got that point.
But no, in the food world, you know, it's even much broader. Right. So we wanted to make sure that we could find foods that acted as your traditional wine pairing foods, and they have, you know, either gluten-free or vegan, whatever it may be, and the chef's done a phenomenal job.
Well, we're very excited. Hopefully next time you allow us to do another interview right in the restaurant.
Let's do it there.
We did an amazing virtual tasting together, and you were at the bar.
Yes, that's right.
Do you remember enjoying a great cocktail? I was jealous. I was drinking Leopard. What do you think of that?
This is phenomenal. What year was this?
2017.
All right.
Yeah, so it's a Cabernet Napa Valley with another grape variety. Which one do you think? Question to the Napa man.
I've got to go Petit Verdot.
Close enough. It's petite, but maybe it starts with an S.
Really? Petit Syrah.
Yes.
All right.
Well, we wanted to keep it very animalistic.
It's got that texture to it. And Petit Verdot and Petit Syrah, I think, is quite similar, but Petit Syrah has much more flavor to it.
Yeah.
Petit Verdot is just kind of like a hollow monster.
Yeah.
Petit Syrah's got much more.
But you're right. There's a few percentage point of Petit Verdot. So that's maybe the one highlighted. So that's now, great. Joe, I know it's been a phenomenal hour together. Now we have a very big question for you. the very big one. What is the thing you haven't achieved yet that you'd like to achieve?
God, well.
38 years old only, so there's plenty of time. Grandmother departed at what age? 96, 97?
She's 98.
98, so there's a long time for Joe to express himself. But anything else?
You know, honestly, I mean, so I've always been one to throw that, whatever they call the big, hairy, audacious goal out there. And I do something really simple. Every couple of years, I'll write down my long-term goals.
Really?
And then I'll just kind of do little check marks along the way. It sounds ridiculous. I've done this since I was 15. Yeah. And they've always come true.
Wow. And
so you just got to reference back to them every once in a while. I've still got papers from whatever, the late 90s that show kind of where I wanted to be in 5 years. And I think that in the back of your mind, once you do that, that's like your North Star. You're always going towards it. And you're going to ping back and forth, east and west, whatever, but you're always moving in that one direction. And so I think that's an important part of it. Now, what do I want to be? What is my aspiration?
What's your wildest, So
I feel like I had to preface it because I simply want to be the largest family-owned and operated luxury wine supplier in the United States.
Well, that's a great goal. Well, you've done it already.
So that's what we're working on right now.
Well, I'll raise my glass to your success. And then I would love for you to, our guests right now, we are at the end of 2020, which was a very challenging, difficult, and for some of us, a successful year because we learn how to be someone else or we learn how to operate differently. Yeah. What would be your message to everyone during this time?
Don't ever give up is what I'd say. If we had when March hit, when the world changed for us in California, if we had just continued to do what we were doing, we would be in the gutter right now. I mean, it would be a difficult year for us. We started communicating more than we had ever communicated and trying new things. Everybody throwing back their successes and their failures, learning from it quickly. And I'm talking stuff you do over a year-long period happening in weeks and never giving up on it, knowing that there was a way to find success in the climate that we were in. And we were able to find success. Right. After about 2 months, we found our groove and just drove it home. And we're going to finish this year actually growing, which if you asked me that in April, I'd say it's a crapshoot. But by May, I was feeling like, all right, things are starting to meld and gel together. But it was about working together as a team and never giving up.
I love the advice. Working as a team, never giving up. Writing your goals every 5 years, every 2 years. I love it. So, Joe, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
The master of Napa Valley, 5 generations. Dear friends, does it get any better? See you soon.
Thank you. Cheers.